Welcome back, guys. I got another clock I'm going to work on. Let me give you a quick look at it. This here's oh goodness, I think it's a Century. But this is the Goodwill store for $12.99. It's pretty well faded now. You see it's got a bit of a crack here. Otherwise, all in all, it's been dropped here maybe. It's been bunged up. You can see where someone stained it a different color. I don't know what they were doing, trying to fix a chip or whatever. I do believe this says made in Korea. I can't tell for sure. And you can see that cracks and whatnot from a little bit of moisture on the back side of the clock. Anyway, this here clock doesn't necessarily tick. Now this still has stapled in there, nailed in there, it looks like. The drying pack, probably original. Got a key. Who knows what that is? I have no idea that this would go to the clock, but we don't get rid of anything until we find out for sure what this clock needs. But it definitely needs to be lined up because it doesn't tick properly, and obviously it needs clean. It's got the nice little pendulum. It's not all scratched up, it's a little dirty. Otherwise, I think we're going to go ahead and take the nut off and take the hands off. And it looks like 3 screws here. I notice those are Phillips heads. I'm not saying this is a brand new clock, this is still an older clock. By the way, I did notice on the minute hand, the tip was broke off because someone was probably turning it from up here. You should always try to turn it on the lower part to change the time of it. I see this is coming loose. That's either an easy fix or just put new ones on, which I have new ones. See the oblong hole. Yeah, this brass piece here is still good inside there. All I do is bend it straight, get it through, and bend it on the proper side it's hidden in behind. It does have an on and off for the chime. You just push it, it's on right now, you push it in, move it over, and now it's going to hold the hammer from hitting the gong. You got the 4 screws undone. As you can see, the chime, I'm going to guess, has been turned off, so that's why this is all wound up. And this one's starting to unwind, but still has power. I don't know if you can see this or not. Those things are just absolutely dirty. And of course, this here's a spring to make sure this here shows over when it's needed. And this here's the plate that tells the clock what hour it actually is. So when this here drops, this little arm here will drop down onto here, and then of course that's all this, and then this will count out your hours, depending on what time it is, depending where it drops here. So let me get this unwound, and we'll get it in the cleaner. So to unwind these, you got your choice, which these here, especially wound up like this, it's very dangerous, but you could put the key on there, loosen it, get the ratchet ready, as in lifted, and then carefully, which this all of a sudden wants to go, carefully unwind it. But most of the time, this thing will take off and it'll rip your fingers off. So they do have this tool here, and it comes with different sizes on the ends that you actually put on the key space. And then when you take this thing and you start to wind it, per se, go ahead and trigger this here, and of course on the right one, which I'm on the right one. You trigger it so that way, let me show you here. So that's starting to come up, so I can go ahead and lift that up. Now this thing's so free, and this is the dangerous part if you're using the key. And now I can safely unwind it. You just slowly let it go with your hand. And there she is. That's why this here is round, so you can hold on to it and use your fingers as a clutch and let it unwind as it wants to. I mean, it wants to take off, so you don't want your clock to fall apart. You slowly let it go. But normally you don't need one of these if you only have one clock, but I have many, so this comes in quite handy. Like I said, this thing will go fast. You got to be careful. And release it, and it'll lock it into place. When you're doing it with the key, you're doing short bursts at a time. Very short bursts. So to show on here why this one didn't open as far as that one, this here does have a stop right there. There's a metal rod that comes down so far. That's so this doesn't get tangled up in the springs. Compared to this side, it doesn't have a stop anywhere. And by the time it gets this far, if it's lucky to get that far, the clock will stop and you're going to have to wind it up anyway. Which I do believe this is a 31 or 35 day clock, I think it says. Here it is, a 35-day clock. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this in the cleaner. There, see, messing with it a little bit. Throw this in the cleaner and see what goes on. Made in Korea, no jewels. Does have a number 1 up here. And nothing on this side. The ratchet. Okay, I'm going to take this outside. That's pretty toxic smelling. Set it in here. That's ammoniated. Hard to say. And that's why I have to use it outside. Now I did buy this here. I haven't used it yet. but they say it pretty much cleans the same way. This here's so you can use it inside the house or a more sealed up room, compared to that there you should use in a well ventilated area. Oh, it didn't come out too bad. Now I need to dry it. But you'll notice on the winding side of the time, not the alarm, but it does have quite a bit of wear in here. I don't know if you can see the different colors in here. So let me get this thing dried with the hair dryer. I also wanted to mention, a lot of people have a problem with winding the clock. When you go to wind your clock, don't give it that extra little turn, because that's what will stop these springs, especially if the clock is getting close to needing cleaning, and the clock will not run. And the only way to get that undone, if you don't take the clock apart and unwind it a little bit like I showed you originally, you have to take this pendulum and hit it every once in a while, and eventually after time it'll run down enough to where it'll go ahead and keep ticking. Sometimes you can take the pendulum off and hit the part that makes the pendulum work, and that might start ticking. Very rare it will, but sometimes that'll start ticking and it'll wind the clock down enough because you possibly overwound it. So on any of these clocks that wind up, don't overwind them. As you can see, I have two different kinds of clock oil. One's just your normal clock oil, and one's a synthetic clock oil. Most of your newer clocks looks like they take the synthetic. Now to install this in here, it's going to be a little difficult getting those back ones screws in because this plate doesn't pop out of here. So I'm going to go ahead and get that installed and go from there. And I had a subscriber turn me on to this, and I'll leave his link below. I do believe his channel name's Time for Clocks. He does a great review and also a lot of history on quite a few clocks. But this here, I went ahead and did the inside of the case, and I figure I'm not going to show the difference on the outside until I get the works put inside it. Feed and wax is so far, as far as I've seen, it's a great product. So this is a clip that goes on the face, and like I say, I just have these things here I need to straighten out a bit so I can set it back in there. So I have them back in there. All I do is just push these in and down, in and down, in and down. Now check this one, it's already coming loose. There. Ready to clean. Wipe it down a little bit and stick it back in. Before I put the face on, I set the hour hand on here so I can see if it works. Now's a good time to adjust the hammer, because if you're thinking it's too loud, you can bend this wire a little bit and get it back just a little bit further, but you do want to be able to hear it. And remember, when you close the door, it's quieter. So it depends on how loud you want the gong to make a noise. you'll notice right here is a red peg. That there normally is how you can level your clock, or that's what's suggested. So the tip of the pendulum will be pointing right at it. But I prefer, if I can, level the clock to a level surface, or at least get the clock itself leveled so it'll fit on any surface. And if you need to shim the surface, so be it, but for now we're going to level this thing up before we start the clock. So I have the bubble leveled in there. Let that run a little bit and then check for the sound of the tick tock, tick tock. So I'm going to go ahead now and use this wax. I did get, I don't know if you can see it, but it is shinier and darkens it. And so now I'm going to do the door and go ahead and get the rest of it. The clock seems to be ticking just fine. I had to do a little bit of adjustment to it to get it to be even. As you can see, this is kind of a paste, or is a paste. Even it out. Now there is a brass piece in here, and that's so if you don't want to set it on a table, you can hang this clock. Just make sure you have a decent head that'll fit through there, but a decent head that will keep the clock on the wall. You don't want it to vibrate off, and I'd suggest using a screw and not a nail into the stud of the wall. I don't know if you can see down here, but there's a discoloration here, and that might be because looks like maybe someone put a filler in here and didn't sand it off properly. And this does have a little bit of stain or paint. I can't tell what it is. I'm not interested in cleaning it off. I'll leave it just the way it is, because I'll probably end up selling this clock. When you go to clean glass, don't spray it on the glass. Spray it on your rag and then wipe it clean. So now it's daylight. You can see a little better of how nice the clock looks now that I use this here wax on it. And my next project on this clock has been running pretty good. Don't know what time it is, but on the minute hand here, it happened to have the other piece to it. With the minute hand, and then there's the tip of it, and I'm gonna try to repair it by cutting a piece of wire and try to glue them together, because for the price of what it costs to buy new hands for this clock and the shipping, it's almost more than what the clock is worth. So I'm going to experiment and see what I can come up with. I'm getting this rod attached to that one there and make it look good and possibly hide the rod too some way or another. So let me try to figure this one out. Well, I cut a wire and I hot glued it on here. It's not the best job. It should be probably super glued on here. For some odd reason I don't have any super glue. At least both pieces will be delivered with the clock when it goes, and they'll know what's going to go on, what's going on. And if they happen to get super glue before I do, this glue actually peels off pretty easily.